On this Tuesday night from London, Her Majesty back at Buckingham Palace. Crowds lining the streets to bid her farewell.
I just wanted to come here and pay my respects myself in my own way.
Canada's National Day of Mourning, when it will happen and which provinces will recognize it. The Toronto Police Service loses one of its own, why he may have been targeted by a gunman. And deflating inflation frustration.
These are things that will make a difference.
Ottawa's promise to make life more affordable.
Global National with Donna Friesen, reporting tonight from London.
On a dark and rainy night in London, another step on her final journey. The Queen's coffin arriving at Buckingham Palace to spend one last night there. A huge crowd gathered to witness it. Earlier, King Charles and the Queen Consort visited Northern Ireland, continuing their tour of the four nations of the United Kingdom. In the crowd of well-wishers, the King spotting something familiar, a corgi, his mother's favorite breed of dog. Later, though, a sign of how grueling the last few days have been. The King frustrated by a leaky fountain pen when signing a visitor's book at Hillsborough Castle.
Oh God, I hate this.
Oh look, it's going everywhere. Hang on. So nobody got shot.
Where is that?
Oh look, it's everywhere.
Can't bear this bloody thing. What they do is everyone's stinking.
The Queen's only daughter, Princess Anne, has traveled with the coffin since it left Balmoral Castle, and today she put out a statement saying, "I was fortunate to share the last 24 hours of my dearest mother's life. It has been an honor and a privilege to accompany her on her final journeys." Good evening and thanks for joining us. Her Majesty's coffin is now here in London, one step closer to her funeral on Monday. Crystal Goomansingh is with me. Crystal, those huge crowds outside Buckingham Palace, it was really quite moving. What's the significance of the coffin being there tonight?
Well, everyone recognizes Buckingham Palace, and of course it is the official residence of the sovereign here in London. But more than that, it is where the Queen and some members of her family will spend a final night under the same roof.
5 days after the notice of her death was attached, the imposing iron gates welcomed the Queen home one last time. The oak coffin will rest overnight in the Bow Room, a bright space overlooking the garden where the Queen entertained dignitaries.
I was working yesterday, so I did watch it on the news. So I told myself, I said, today I will be here. I was just crying, and then I said to myself, I said, no, today I'm not going to miss today. I need to be here.
This small garden area near the Palace of Holyrood House, a refuge for many needing to express their grief and pay respects. Personal little notes and gifts tucked into the thick blanket of bouquets.
They've also lost someone who was greatly respected and admired, and so everyone is, I think on the whole, wishing them well.
The Princess Royal has been at the Queen's side since her last day. Continuing her role as companion, they left Scotland, a place her mother loved, for the last time. The national anthem played as the Royal Air Force C-17 taxied slowly down the runway, lifting off into a setting sun. In London, an English welcome, a steady rain adding to the solemn moment. The weather not a factor for people lining the route from the Royal Air Force Station Northolt to central London. Vehicles stopped on the motorway as the state hearse with interior lights on, drawing attention to the flag-draped coffin, made its way to the palace.
The Queen often said she has to be seen to be believed, and it's believed that hundreds of thousands will visit her coffin as it lies in state at Westminster Hall for 4 days. And if that experience is anything like it was for people in Edinburgh, it will be deeply profound and emotional. Donna?
All right, Crystal Goomansingh in London, thank you. The King and Queen Consort are inside Buckingham Palace tonight. Earlier today, they were in Northern Ireland. They're visiting each of the nations in the United Kingdom to receive condolences before the Queen's funeral. Between the 1960s and the 1990s, more than 3,500 people were killed during the so-called Troubles. As Redmond Shannon reports, the new monarch's visit was a reminder how far Northern Ireland has come.
Arriving in Belfast, the new King Charles III greeted by children from an integrated school. But despite Northern Ireland's 2 decades of relative peace, almost all kids still go to schools segregated by religion. For Catholics who mostly identify as Irish, or for Protestants who often identify as British. Outside Hillsborough Castle, some could barely contain their joy. For many Northern Irish Unionists, love of the Crown is an important part of their identity, one that some see as threatened by a shifting political landscape. That illustrated inside the castle, the King meeting Michelle O'Neill, Northern Ireland's First Minister designate, an Irish Republican who rejects the monarchy and seeks reunification with Ireland, a meeting once unthinkable. Irish Republicans killed the King's beloved great-uncle, Lord Mountbatten, while Charles himself spent decades as Colonel-in-Chief of the Parachute Regiment, blamed for one of the deadliest days of Northern Ireland's Troubles, Bloody Sunday. Today, even Republican leaders say the late Queen Elizabeth helped to heal those wounds.
The day of the Queen's funeral has been declared a federal holiday by the Canadian government. That means federal workers will have the day off. But as Eric Sorensen reports, it doesn't mean next Monday will be a holiday for every Canadian.
A national holiday to mourn the passing of Canada's Queen is, like the monarchy itself, a complicated subject in this country.
Well, why not?
Therese Alfieri believes a holiday is appropriate.
She's always been part of our lives, regardless. And I think that in itself is something to honor.
Not so, says Aida Morris.
I don't think we need a holiday for the Queen.
Why?
Well, I'm not a monarchist.
But a national holiday it should be and will be, says the Prime Minister.
There are still a few details to be worked out, but declaring an opportunity for Canadians to mourn on Monday is going to be important.
The Prime Minister says he'll work with the provinces and territories, but Quebec's Premier suggested today his province won't take the day off and he'll keep campaigning for re-election. Something else to consider, a national holiday can also have an impact on the economy. A day off for many people could be a boost for tourism, but it can also set back overall economic activity. At Retro Rides in Ottawa, a day when more Canadians can relax with activities like bike riding can be good for business.
We'll be open because, we're a bike shop.
But Jason Commandant says these are tough economic times for which a holiday does not help.
We have rent and all the operating costs for business don't go away.
One business group is urging provinces not to follow the federal lead to avoid another blow to economic productivity.
We're still fighting inflationary pressures. The added cost to a business, even if it's just a day, is significant and something we'd like to avoid if we're able.
Will they actually reflect on the Queen's passing?
Monday will be a poignant day, and for many Canadians, a holiday on short notice, as the Prime Minister said, means there are details to be worked out. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
The Liberal government announced plans it says will help deal with rising prices. More than $4.5 billion have been earmarked to help Canadians cope with the soaring cost of living, including the first steps in that long-talked-about federal dental care program. Abigail Beeman explains what's promised.
Speaking from a New Brunswick pier, the Prime Minister outlined steps Liberals say will help Canadians struggling with record inflation.
These are things that will make a difference in people's lives right now, but they are also sufficiently targeted that we are confident that they will not contribute to increased inflation.
The Liberals are promising to double the GST credit for 6 months, offer direct payments for dental care for low-income uninsured children under 12 this year, and a one-time $500 top-up to the Canada Housing Benefit for renters. Pierre Poilievre, meanwhile, announced his new leadership team and launched his first official attack on a Liberal announcement as official opposition leader.
The problem with spending more money as a solution to inflation is that it simply pours more gasoline on the inflationary fire.
The Liberal plan will cost more than $4.5 billion. At least $3.1 billion is on top of money promised in Budget 2022.
None of these measures will do anything for inflation or try to target prices in any way. They're an offset for the increase in prices.
The NDP are taking all the credit, pushing the Liberals for tangible action on their governance deal this parliamentary session.
We're proud that we're able to use our power to get something meaningful for Canadians, to force this government to do something meaningful for Canadians.
Tuesday's dental care plan is just the first stage, and the Canadian Dental Association believes it really will make a difference, seeing too many kids for their first appointment too late and already struggling.
If we're able to see children earlier, we can prevent a lot of dental disease from happening. There are some tremendous opportunities here to make a difference.
The Prime Minister says the steps outlined Tuesday will be the first legislation to be tabled when the House of Commons resumes next week. MPs have wrapped up their caucus retreat here, heading back to Ottawa for a special session in Parliament Thursday to commemorate the death of the Queen. Abigail Beeman, Global News, St. Andrews, New Brunswick.
The Toronto Police Service in shock and grieving. Coming up, the slain officer being remembered as a gentle giant. Plus, Ukraine's new goal in Russia's war. Two fathers, one a police officer, the other the owner of a mechanic shop, are being remembered today. Constable Andrew Hong served 22 years on the force. He was shot and killed while on his lunch break. And community members say Shakil Ashraf was joyful, always helping to fix cars, even if clients couldn't afford it. Their deaths and the injuries of 3 others are now under investigation. Mike Drolet reports.
The lights from dozens of police vehicles cut through the Toronto night, lighting the way for a procession of honor to escort Constable Andrew Hong's body to the coroner's office. Toronto police lining the street, their faces a mix of shock and confusion. This morning, as the police chief met with Hong's colleagues, it was clear the new day brought few answers.
We've got a whole host of civilian members in here that have known, some of them have worked with him for 20 years. They're quite distraught over the whole situation.
It was 2:15 p.m. Monday when Constable Hong and another person were shot in what police are calling an ambush. At 3:25 p.m., another man is killed and 2 others wounded in nearby Milton. Peel Police and Halton Police send out near-identical tweets about the suspect, leading to an emergency alert being issued at 4:25 p.m. Just over an hour later, Hamilton Police confront Sean Petrie, who died in a shootout. The second victim has been identified as Shakil Ashraf, a father of 3 and the owner of an auto repair shop, where Petrie reportedly used to work. There doesn't appear to be any connection between Petrie and Hong, a 22-year veteran of the force and father of 2 who's been described as a gentle giant.
Constable Hong was blatantly shot in the back for wearing a uniform. You know, I'm just getting chills talking to you guys. It's very, very tough.
An investigation has been launched, but it could be months or longer before police release their findings.
You want it to be done properly. So we do not want to rush, and we do not want to rush with information out into the public.
What happened, he says, will come in time. For now, there is only grief over the loss of 2 men, one in the line of duty. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
Ukrainian officials now say their aim is to recapture all Russian-controlled territory within that country to extend what they're already calling a highly successful counteroffensive.
Наші воїни вже звільнили понад 6 тисяч квадратних кілометрів території України.
President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukrainian forces have now liberated more than 6,000 square kilometers since the beginning of September, an area slightly larger than Prince Edward Island. Russia has admitted to losing key cities in the northeast, but the Kremlin calls it a regrouping and not a retreat. Several dozen soldiers have been killed in a string of skirmishes along the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Both countries are accusing the other of triggering the latest round of hostilities in a decades-old dispute over one area of Azerbaijan that is largely populated by ethnic Armenians. That dispute led to a full-scale war in the 1980s and 90s and a 6-week war in 2020. Both the U.S. and Russia are calling for a ceasefire and for both nations to return to the negotiating table. How the Queen's death could change the reach of the royal brand. Queen Elizabeth's passing is a major moment in history, and it's likely to have an impact on the UK economy. You can already see the immediate effects. The bank holiday on Monday, thousands of people flooding into London, and of course all those royal souvenirs. A quick Google search reveals all sorts of unofficial King Charles merchandise already on sale. But at stake, too, is the future of the royal family's brand, which, as Anne Gaviola explains, might never financially recover from the Queen's death.
The Queen's death marks not only the loss of the UK and Canada's constitutional head, but the figurehead and brand ambassador of the monarchy itself.
I mean, there really is no one like the Queen, right?
The royal family's brand value was ranked 4th globally in 2017, behind only Google, Apple, and Amazon. The royal family enterprise, known as the Firm, is a pillar of UK tourism, goodwill in trade, services, and merchandise. Nostalgia spending is likely to drive a short-term bump in revenue for a beloved queen.
I must confess I shed a few tears because she was such a remarkable woman.
The royal family enterprise costs British taxpayers $700 million annually and generates $3.7 billion in revenue. There will be one-time costs for the Queen's funeral, the coronation of King Charles III, and a national holiday. Costs analysts say could tip Britain into a small technical recession, though the King has committed to running a financially slimmed-down enterprise. But many question how her son and family will fare as brand custodians.
The popularity of the monarchy abroad has certainly dwindled in certain years, and people feel it is out of touch or it's dated.
A new survey from Leger finds Canadians split on whether Charles will be a good king, but the vast majority are pretty indifferent to Canada's new head of state.
The significance of the Queen passing away may feel almost alien or divorced experience, and I think that there is going to be a certain degree of discourse that will need to happen in Canada around the idea of the place of the royal family.
The debate now is what role the new monarchy and its storied and controversial legacy will play in modern Canada. Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Next, the history of the ancient building where the Queen will lie in state. One million people or more are expected to come here to the heart of London to see the Queen lying in state. And the government is already warning people the queue will be very long, possibly all night, and there will be little opportunity to sit down. Yet, even more than 30 hours before anyone can get into the lying of state, people are already lining up. I went to talk to some of them.
This is a moment in history these people don't want to miss. Glyn Norris says even if you're not a monarchist, it feels like the world has lost a grandmother.
It might be raining at the moment, but she reigned for 70 years, so a little bit of rain's not going to hurt me for 24 hours.
They're lining up across the river from Westminster Hall, prepared in both body and spirit.
You're obviously prepared to do what it takes to see her lying in state.
Oh yes, definitely, absolutely prepared, yeah. Prepared to stay all night, got warm clothes, food, drinks, to honour a great lady.
Why did you feel you had to be here?
Because she just meant so much to me. She's been part of my life all my life.
Multiply that feeling by tens of thousands, and that's what's expected along the route to the lying in state. Starting Wednesday afternoon for 24 hours a day until early Monday morning, the Queen's coffin will lie here, inside the only part of the ancient Palace of Westminster which survives in almost its original form. Built in 1097, Westminster Hall has played a central role in British history, astonishing not just for its size and magnificent timber roof, but for what's gone on here. Henry VIII was crowned, Charles I and Guy Fawkes were tried and condemned. Nelson Mandela addressed Parliament here. And 70 years ago, the Queen's father, King George VI, lay in state here. Hundreds of thousands of people lined the route to pay their respects. His daughter, then a young Queen Elizabeth, was among them.
And when the King died, the queue stretched from there all the way along the road behind me, and over 400,000 people filed past, which was considered a lot in those days. It'll be considerably more this time because a lot more people knew of the Queen.
For now, the Queen's coffin will spend one last night in her old home before what's expected to be an unparalleled act of public mourning.
And the funeral for the Queen will take place next Monday at Westminster Abbey, right behind me. We will have live coverage as the royal family and people from around the world say goodbye to the longest reigning monarch in history. That is Global National for this Tuesday. From London, I'm Donna Friesen. We leave you tonight with more images from the funeral cortège. The Queen's coffin carried by her colour squadron, then driven through London, watched by thousands of people lining the route before resting for a final night inside Buckingham Palace. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.